Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course, a whole lot of opinions about Brandon's works and the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me is Ian.
Hey, I'm your writer, and today I have show and tell.
Oh no, okay.
So, longtime listeners of the program might be aware that Eric forced me to banish my laptop.
That's true.
Far away from my desk.
That is true.
Audio quality.
If you watched things in the summer of 2021 and like, what's that noise when Ian's talking? That's his laptop.
Yeah. Which is fine, except for when I need to type things, because it's way over there.
Yes.
So I now have
a keyboard.
A keyboard.
Wow.
So I can actually do stuff during an episode now, which is, I am very excited by this.
Okay, cool.
Debuted at the Dragonsteel Minicon. I finally got my my 17 shard pin.
Those look pretty
snazzy.
Great.
Those look so good.
Yeah, shipping pins will be hard, so you maybe eventually will be able to put them for sale online, but that requires a storefront and stuff. That's complicated. But eventually we will probably sell those in some form. Yeah. But they're very
At
cool.
least for now, they're going to be a con exclusive type thing, simply for fact that production is hard.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and we're busy. Also joining us is Jess. Hello.
Hello, I'm Lady Lameness. I also have show and tell, and it's kind of funny that Ian, you were saying that you got a keyboard because your laptop is far away, because I'm using Eric's laptop and it's like over there.
Yeah.
And I have a mouse. So between us, we have almost a computer. That is not my actual show and tell.
Okay.
That was just a funny thing that I realized.
Great.
I have to show and tell these little babies, which are some jellyfish. Fake jellyfish, they're not real jellyfish. But I went to the aquarium over Christmas break, and they had these little jellyfish, and they are so cute, and they move around in this dancing colors, and I love them. And completely coincidentally to this, I also made a tiny little jellyfish baby.
It's so
tiny
cute.
Little one. I have not yet named my little jellyfish baby, so if anyone has a good name, you should put them.
Put those comments below. Boost that engagement. Also joining us is Veronica. Hey.
Hey, I am Cheyenne Sedai on the Discord and the forums. I don't have show and tell. I am just glad I finally found my Dear Evangeline necklace again, because it had been lost for like a month.
Oh yeah,
And I just found it in the pocket of the universe.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god. Yeah. Because I thought I'd lost it, and it was a gift from my godfather. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. The Badali jewelry, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a very special guest. We have Janci Patterson, the author of the Skyward Flight novellas and many other things.
Many other things. Hi, I'm Janci. I wrote some books you may have heard of, and other ones you probably haven't.
Yeah, we were talking before you started that you put out like 9 books a year?
For the last 3 years, it's been insane.
If you think Brandon's productive.
Not.
Well,
you do
so
that.
when I was a baby writer who'd been writing for like 5 years, I met Brandon before Elantris had come out, and that was like the biggest author I had ever met. Like, I had never met anybody who sold a book before, and I believed that I needed to be just like Brandon.
Yep.
And so I turned myself into someone who can just spit out books, and then it turns out no one else does this. Hey, it's still a good career thing. Anyway.
I mean, yes.
So I also have show and tell. So did we say there's spoilers, right? Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. Let's specify that there will be spoilers for all 3 Skyward Flight novellas and presumably Cytonic as well. Like, but we won't spoil Cosmere things. I don't think at all. Don't think we're
spoil them for me. I'm not caught up.
Brandon writes a lot of books. That's a fact.
Brandon writes a lot of books, and I wrote a lot of books and did not have time to read all of them. But I will, because I love them. I am a fan. I still like to count myself a fan, even though I'm behind.
That's fine.
So my show and tell, my editor, Christy Kugler, she makes the novellas look good and makes me not look stupid. She's an amazing editor. She made for me, this is Juno. And he has a little book with all of the meditations in it.
Oh, that's so cool.
And at the end, it has like Jorgen's title. and like space for him to chronicle all of the adventures.
That's so cool.
Wow, that's adorable.
So cute.
Oh my goodness, that's adorable.
That's the best show and tell.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Christy's awesome.
It's adorable.
That is so that's so cute. So we thought we'd start with just tell us a bit about who you are for people who are not aware who you are.
So I write books. I write in several genres. I have a romantic comedy series out called The Extra with Megan Walker. And then also with Megan Walker, I have a series of young adult urban fantasy paranormal romance set in Venice. And then we also work with our friend Lauren Janis, and we have a epic fantasy series, starts with Godfire. We use a pen name for that one since there's 3 of us, so it's under the name Kara Witter. So, and then I have other books that I put out under my own name. You can find them. So I've been writing books for a long time. I am now exclusively a co-writer because I love to work with people. Like I discovered that when I write books with people, I'm so much happier than I am when I write them by myself. So that's what I do now. I also co-wrote the last book in the Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarian series that's coming out in September. So
we do want to talk about that a bit.
Finally.
Because when did you start working on that? Because that was it's been in a lot of State of Sandersons
years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was probably like 5 years ago now that I was brought on, and then it took like about a year like sending me outlines. Like not that we spent a year working on it, but like just the steps to get to me actually writing the book took about a year. And then the Alcatraz tradition, I don't know, Brandon probably talked about this a lot. He wrote the first book in like 10 days while his girlfriend was out of town, like back in like right after he was out of college.
It was a break book between Mistborns. Yeah.
And so I wanted to follow the tradition. So I wrote the first half in a week and I wrote the second half in a week 6 months later after Brandon had read the first half. So
oh my
the
God.
actual writing was real short. But then the issue, like, I feel like I talked about this on the Discord the other day, but there's a lot of stuff that has to happen in publishing for a book to come out. And like contracts departments are way behind, and like Joshua, Brandon's agent, doesn't want to send more stuff through the pipeline when more important stuff like Stormlight hasn't cleared through the pipeline. So it sat there waiting for contracts and waiting for the publisher to be on board for a long time. And so that was the major hang up. And then the publisher decided that they wanted to do a re-release of all the paperbacks of the other books because they're trying to get some traction for the series. It's never been Brandon's biggest thing.
No, it has not been.
Yeah,
and we appreciate them trying to get some traction for the series.
Yeah.
So of course Brandon said, yes, please do that. So that then they have to do production for everything. And so then that pushes it back even further.
Right.
So we aren't like hanging on to it because we want to deprive people of it, but just because publishing is complicated.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I am quite excited to finally have the end of that series, but I definitely need to reread it because I don't remember like anything.
I need to read it. I haven't gotten to Alcatraz or really any of Brandon's non-Cosmere stuff except the Skyward series.
For those
and Novellas and all that.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Alcatraz is very silly. Like,
oh yeah,
very silly.
Yeah.
It's like a brand of humor that not everybody likes it, but people who like it really love it. Like it has like a small but hardcore fan base, which is awesome. And I was in the hardcore fan base. So
I mean, I found them hilarious. You can just crank them out in an evening, and just they're really fun. What, Jess?
You could just crank them out in an evening, he says when he reads like at inhumane speeds.
Okay.
So Eric can probably crank them out.
I maybe read like 3/4 of all of Ascension in a sitting, okay, from like about 9 hours, so it's fine.
He read 2/3 of that book in like in a day.
I know people who read all of the Wheel of Time, like on release in a day. Then again, I also did the same thing for Knife of Dreams because I was sick that day, and so I just read the whole day.
Yeah. I just want to read, and I'm reading all day, and that's what I'm doing, and then I'm going to do other things after I'm done reading. And that's the only way I have time to read. Nice. So speaking of the Skyward Flight novellas, how have they been doing? Just like sales-wise and things. I feel like
I have no idea.
Okay.
Because the publisher doesn't. They give us sales data once every 6 months, and I have seen none.
Oh, okay.
It looks like they're doing well. Evershore hit the USA Today bestseller list.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting. I had never done that before. I was so excited.
Yeah, that's great.
Sunreach and ReDawn hit the bestseller list?
I don't think so. My theory on that, because I can't imagine that it did significantly better because it's book 3, although it may have done better on release day because people had sort of gained traction over time. But it was the week of Christmas, so I wonder if it was a little easier to get on the list that week.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That does make sense. But also, if you're a Skyward fan, you got a lot of content to read, and so probably having Cytonic come out and having there be buzz in the series, right?
And I feel like people at first, naturally, it makes complete sense. We're a little bit skeptical about bringing on a new author to the series, and so I feel like not everybody was jumping right on Sunreach. Word gets around, and people are enjoying them, which makes me so happy. And I think people have been gradually coming on board.
Definitely within the 17th Shard fandom, people seem to be loving them, and everyone's been really enjoying them and really enjoying interacting with you as well and being able to talk about them quite a bit.
It makes me so happy because I like I said, I think I came on for Alcatraz 5 years ago, and we had talked about doing these books, not these novellas, but me working on the Skyward series years before that. And
really?
So I've had a long time to sort of imagine every bad fan reaction possible. Right?
Those are the nightmares you get late at night.
I just assume me coming in, people are going to attribute the things that are good about them to Brandon and the things that are bad about them to me.
Right.
And, I was so I just thought it was inevitable. And then the fan reaction has just been incredible. I am just so grateful to people for reading. And then people have complaints. It's fine. People complain about books. This is what we all do, right? It's a hobby.
Every book you love has people who don't like it.
Yeah, but I was worried about Star Wars backlash.
Yes.
And I haven't seen any of that. It makes me really happy.
Yeah. It does sort of help that these novellas are, I would say, filling in an important gap that's in the mainline series. So that makes them it's very nice to have them.
Well, and Brandon's aware, when he pitched the project to me, he said, so my main series left these people behind and I accidentally made them really likable. I was oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Brandon. He is always accidentally writing things.
He accidentally made them the best cast of characters he's written. Maybe not the best, but one of the best.
One of the best.
Biased.
And it's caused such an interesting divergence in fans as well, because you have the fans who have just followed the series for Spencer, but then you've got the fans who really latched on to the other characters in book 1, and it's just led to very different reading experiences. So I've known a lot of people who have really liked the novellas because they give what people wanted in book 2 but felt like they were missing, and it's given a really nice parallel to Cytonic, with Cytonic being Spencer only. There's really nothing in Cytonic except for some of the interludes that makes it seem like she's connected to the outside world. And to have both of those stories at the same time fills the gap for both sides of what people want. And that has been really nice. Reading the novellas and Cytonic together, I definitely felt like that together was one whole story, whereas reading Cytonic by itself or reading the novellas by itself, you are missing part of what's going on. So having everything all together, I kind of wish that all the books had been packaged together in a way, like Cytonic and the 3 novellas, because to me, that is book 3. Book 3 is not just Cytonic. Book 3 is Cytonic and the novellas. You need all of them for book 4.
Yeah, no, and I think Brandon has said you definitely need to read those before you read Defiant, and I think that's true. I think otherwise you're gonna be wait, what happened?
Exactly.
Yeah,
because there's the random line at the end of Cytonic, Detritus is just in orbit around another planet.
And it's sure. And Jorgen is the admiral. Sure.
Yeah.
That's something I've seen a lot of controversy about too, of which should you read first, right? Cytonic or the novellas. And we wrote them to be you can read them either way, but everybody has their preferred reading order. And so that's another good thing to drop in the comments. What's your preferred reading order?
Yeah, because my understanding is that it was just too difficult to get Evershore out before Cytonic, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it had to be
so
later.
That being said, I had a conversation with Max. Max runs Mainframe. Mainframe is the audio publisher for these books. And so most of the time, Random House didn't get on board until like right before Sunreach came out. So most of my time was spent working with Max.
Wow.
Okay.
Max. That's who he is. So when we wrote the production schedule, because Brandon is so great in that he's like, take whatever time you want. And I'm like, but you have this book coming out. And like, I felt like getting people on board with a co-writing situation is a big leap. And I wanted to take advantage of that excitement of people are excited for Cytonic coming out. And here's a piece of fiction that they can read in the middle of their excitement to get people reading them. And that was really important to me. And so I sat down with Max and was like, okay, what can we do? Can we get these out? And it was insane. Like I say, like I got on board with Alcatraz like 5 years ago and it's not out yet. And like I got on board with these a year and 3 months ago. Right? Like It was madness. But Max and I wrote the schedule. And when we did that, I told him, okay, look, this is what happens in Evershore. This is the line at the end of Cytonic. What do you think? Like, what should we do? And he said, I think that's a really cool hook. I think we should put out Cytonic first. And it turned out to be absolutely necessary, but we did make the decision before we knew that it was going to be absolutely necessary. So
that's very interesting because reading Evershore already having read Cytonic, like it is kind of an interesting hook because you're like, oh man, what the crap's going on there? But I can definitely see if people are like, that's also kind of a spoiler also,
yeah,
right?
The line between spoiler and teaser is like sort of in the eye of the beholder, right? So I'm really interested because I haven't really seen a consensus about what people think. If there was a fan consensus, then I would go back to Brandon and be like, okay, in the future, let's recommend this, you know? But it seems like some people are like, no, you should totally read Cytonic first. And some people are like, no, you should totally read Evershore first. So
I'm definitely in the camp that says you should read Evershore first.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about it much before our Evershore episode. And we talked about it there. And I'm like, yeah, you should read Evershore first. I didn't, but
it's tricky because Starsight kind of has a cliffhanger, and so you might want to follow Spencer. But also ReDawn has a big cliffhanger for Evershore. So I feel like there's a very simple flowchart that you just ask yourself after Starsight. Do you miss Skyward Flight characters? Read all the novellas. If you are really into Spencer and don't mind, that other cast not really being there, go read Cytonic. And then I think you should read all three novellas together. So it is sort of weird having them split, but I wouldn't say it was bad, right? It's definitely a little weird, though.
Once it's out in print, I don't imagine very many people are going to like stop at the end of ReDawn. Some people might, but like you're going to hit that cliffhanger at the end of ReDawn and you're going to be like, I could turn the page, but no, I'm going to go read Cytonic.
Yeah, no one's going to do that.
That's not happening.
I think that's going to happen now that Evershore is out. People aren't going to stop after ReDawn to go read Cytonic. I think that that was only ever going to happen in the liminal space that was the releases. And now people are either going to read Cytonic or all the novellas, and they're not going to split across either of them.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I read them after all three of the novellas were out and Cytonic was out. And I read Cytonic, then went back to Evershore. Okay, I read Cytonic, then a draft of a friend's book, and then I went to read Evershore because I needed to know what happened in All Flames Cast. It's a fantastic book. I hope it gets published.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's just really interesting. Hearing, but Evershore needs a nice hook. And I mean, it is compelling because if you just read Cytonic, you're like, where's Cobb? Why is Jorgen in charge? Right. What happened? I need to know now.
And Max, at that time, I was still working on ReDawn. He hadn't read ReDawn at that time. And so possibly he would have been like, Evershore doesn't need a hook.
Probably doesn't, all things considered.
But
yeah.
Definitely getting to the end of Cytonic and Cobb's not there. I'm like, Cobb did not just die off on the sidelines.
He can't die off screen.
I'm gonna be pissed if Cobb just died off on the sidelines. And it was such a like, I'm glad he didn't die. Like, I was really happy with where Cobb's storyline went and how it took him out of circulation so that other people could shine.
Yeah.
But it didn't kill him.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased by that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We talked about that when we were brainstorming, and we talked about what we want. I mean, because you have to remove the mentor, right? Like, it's necessary. And we talked about whether or not, like, we were going to kill him. And what we came to was, you can't kill people inside books. Like, that would really make people angry if, like, they come back and somebody's dead that they didn't know they needed to read that book. So people, I've heard some complaints about people, like, people aren't dying, but, like, we can't kill main characters in books that are side books. We just can't do it. Like, there are some deaths, but not like our main beloved people, because that would not be good.
See, just our beloved people's parents.
just to cause pain and suffering on our beloved people.
I mean, we could kill T-Stall. Like, what's T-Stall or Catnip doing? I mean, they'll be fine.
Okay. I do have to say, what does T-Stall mean? None of us know.
Actually, that was one of we're doing more books. And Brandon has I'm working with Darci Cole, who's one of beta readers. I'm really excited to write with her. But we're both doing some more books in the Skyward series. And we have an outline sitting in Brandon's inbox, waiting for him to look at it. And at the end, I always put, like, here's some other things I need to know that aren't part of this outline. And it's on there. I asked the question.
I need to know what T-Stall is.
When he gets back to me, I will have an answer, maybe.
When he gets back to you, please tell us.
Yeah. When he gets back to me and is like, I don't know.
Oh my God.
You probably will. I'll be like, I need to look at my notes. That's too far away. Like, I don't know.
Did you ask what Spencer's mother's name is by any chance? Because I remember that coming up on the Discord.
Yeah. So I was not aware until after I had turned in Evershore that Spencer's mother doesn't have a name. I was like, wait, what? I would have named her. So I am not bringing this up to Brandon because I want to name her.
Oh, nice.
So I'm kind of hoping he doesn't get wind of this, and then he publishes Cytonic, and then it's mine. Oh no, I didn't ask.
Yeah, who married Z Nightshade?
Yeah, there's this thing about mothers that are unnamed or dead. Mostly dead in the Cosmere, but many of them are undated.
At least she's alive.
Maybe for once we can actually get a name with Janci naming Spencer's mother instead of Brandon just not having names for mothers.
I will say, in Brandon's defense, I think he's better than your average male writer at not fridging all the women in the world. Not that he never does it, but I don't get as filled with rage reading his stuff as I do with other people's sometimes.
There are definitely...
He just has other things that he does that annoy some of his audience.
Yes. They got that.
We had an episode recently on the beefs we have with Brandon's works, and one of them was like his use of the trope of fake out deaths, which I brought up. I have a major problem with Brandon doing this all the time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And there have been quite a number of those in the Skyward series too.
Yes, there have been. Yes. Oh boy, yes. I keep having arguments about it.
Did we do it? I don't think there were any fake out deaths in the novellas, though. Really? I mean, maybe kind of at the end of Sunreach, sort of.
Oh yeah, at the end of Sunreach for like a chapter.
Yeah.
Oh, with the Jorgen stuff. Yeah.
I mean, he's too main character to actually die.
That definitely hit me. Like, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I was pulled in by that.
It's supposed to be like, what I meant to happen was you have this gut punch, but then you realize, okay, but we didn't see a body. He's not really dead, right? And you say that to yourself, and then you read it and you're right, like a couple paragraphs later, right? Like, that was the intended response.
He's just too much of a main character to die in the first novella.
Yeah, and he has a teleportation.
Yes, I know.
Slug.
Yeah,
and by that point, I think we knew he'd have Evershore. That was his POV novella.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Like, we knew that he was POV and Evershore by that point. So
it's
kind of hard to kill a character,
right? Yes,
but also, like, if you like came after, if you were thinking about the three novellas, who's like top character to have a novella? Jorgen, absolutely, right? Like, top of the list.
So he wasn't on. So when Brandon gave me the job, he said, okay, so I want you to write these. And like, at the time, this is the thing about Brandon, and probably you can tell just based on the way that his series go. He starts with like, you're going to write these 3 novellas and they're going to be 30,000 words each. And they're just write an adventure with these people. That's your whole job. They are having a side adventure, right? This is my job. And so like, and then it grows to like, oh, here's a cool way it could tie into Cytonic. Oh, here's another cool thing you could put it in. Oh, here's something else you could do. And then it becomes this like part of the series. That is not what I was asked to write. It grows, right? The ideas just grow, which is awesome because the ideas are awesome and I was really excited about it, but it's just kind of funny. But he gave me a list, and the list was everybody who was still alive on Skyward Flight except for Spensa and Jorgen.
Yeah.
And so then I actually hadn't read the books because like I said, I'm behind on Brandon's stuff. And so I hadn't read them yet. And so I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that because I'm just like, yes, Brandon, I will do whatever you want. And then I went and read the books and I was so relieved to love them so much because I was like, well, I'm writing them either way. But they were like my favorite of his YA stuff for sure.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
And then, but I read them and I fell in love with Jorgen and I was like, he's not on my list though. Is there a reason? And as I was reading, I was just like, maybe something's going to happen. He's going to end up with Spensa. He's going to die. What's going to happen? And then I got to the end and I was like, wait, why can't I have him? I went back to Brandon and I was like, okay, so I want to write about FM. I wanted to write about FM because of the rig hook, because I'm a romance writer and I wanted to do the romance.
That makes sense.
I needed a pilot. And so I didn't want to do rig because he's not in a ship. And so, and then I was like, so I think an alien point of view would be really cool. And Alanique's just sitting here. Can I write about her? And Brandon was like, oh, sure, you can write about her. And I was like, okay, this is like my warm up to like what I really want.
I'm used to agreeing with you.
So is there a reason I can't write about Jorgen? And he was like, and the caveat was that Jorgen's tied in with Spence's arc. So he had like sort of a vision for where Jorgen was going. And like Brandon wants to have all the freedom in the world when he writes. And so he very like kindly wants to give me all the freedom in the world. And we've sort of like figured each other out as over writing these books. That I don't like that. I like being told, here are some parameters. And then I want to do cool things inside the parameters, right? That's how I work. Okay. And so he was like, so there will be some things like you won't have as much freedom. And I was like, awesome. Tell me what to do.
What? Because I remember Brandon talking like way back, like not last year anymore, but 2020, that Cytonic would be maybe a dual viewpoint book.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Like I don't know what you know about that.
I don't know anything about that. I assume it was Jorgen.
Yeah, right.
I assume that was the plan, and then he decided that would be better off being its own thing. I don't know. I'm not sure at what point that stopped being the plan. Yeah. He had actually written Cytonic. He was writing it when I was just starting Sunreach, so my books didn't influence Cytonic in any way because he had already written them by the time that he read the first one. Did
he know like the vague outline of what you were planning?
Yeah, he'd seen a detailed outline of Sunreach because we did those. Like we would brainstorm. I'd write down all the ideas, and it's like I call it Brandon's big bucket of ideas. I have a meeting with Brandon and he just dumps ideas into my bucket. And then I take the ideas and I go and I sit there with my outline and I wrestle with them. And then I send him the outline and he goes through the outline and he dumps more ideas into my outline. And I stop sending outlines to Brandon when I'm like, okay, I have enough ideas now. No more ideas.
But what if you do this?
Write a book.
Yeah.
What was some of your favorite ideas that kind of came out of Brandon dumping these things into the bucket?
So my favorite was the end of ReDawn. Like, I think I don't take responsibility for that one. Like, that was not me. But like, I was like, we were talking about when we were doing our brainstorm session for ReDawn, and we were trying to figure out like how this book ends. And I had built up, I needed some villains because I can't really use the superiority as like our on platform prime villains.
Yeah.
And so I built up like Joshua to be like sort of my villain. And then Brandon is like, you know what we should do in the end? We should put a bunch of politicians onto a ship and blow it up, like blow up their assembly. And I was like,
oh my God.
Okay, but the politicians, they're Jorgen's parents. Brandon, are we blowing up Jorgen's parents? And he was like, yeah, blow up his parents. That's great. Yes. And I was like, okay. In my head, I'm thinking like right before I jump into his viewpoint, that's going to be something. And it was, but I thought it was great. I never would have thought of that. And I thought it was just fantastic. My other favorite idea was Boomslug. It was actually Brandon's son's idea.
Oh,
we were outlining, he was like, okay, so you don't have to do this, but my kids want there to be red and black slugs and they explode. And I was like, I think I do have to do that. I think that's necessary.
Especially like with Boom Slug saying boom as the ship explodes. It's just like, oh, it's so good.
It's so much fun.
And the fact that the boom is like so much lower than like the other slug noises. It's just like,
it's hilarious. But yeah, you got to make the characters
interplay
suffer.
with Boom Slug is like, it's not just that, like throughout Evershore as well, there's several times with Jorgen where there's just like they say boom back to each other, and the way that you've written it, I could just feel the connection between them.
Oh yeah,
and it's really great.
Yes,
that makes me so happy.
Oh man, but really, Jorgen's. Also, we have no idea Jorgen or Jorgen. I looked at a poll on 17 Shard, and it's very evenly split between the two camps.
So I have a J name that people mispronounce as a Y, so I naturally say Jorgen. I've heard Brandon say both.
Of course. Great. Thanks a bunch.
Of course you would.
But to be fair, like we're used to Stormlight, where it's like, oh, it's Yasna, not Jasna, right?
Yeah.
So that's. Yeah. But
yeah,
if your name is pronounced with a Y, then you would get kind of annoyed with that, I imagine.
Then we have all the weirdness with Wheel of Time pronunciations.
Oh, yeah.
And Elytra's pronunciations. Like, literally, the first rule I laid down for our Elytra's recording, like, we're not going to fight about pronunciations on stuff. Nice. It'll take over the whole episode. No.
Yes, it will. We did a whole pronunciation episode in 2018, long time ago. But no, I think Jorgen's struggle in Evershore made it so compelling. Like he would have been compelling regardless, but that struggle with grief and everything was really, really compelling to read.
And I liked how you tied it in with him also exploring his cytonic abilities, where he literally exploded during the Senate meeting because he was bottling up his emotions. It's like, yes, all the things are connecting. Very good.
I am not an idea person. That's why I love working with Brandon. He gives me all the ideas and I don't have to come up with any of my own. But in every book I've written with him, there's a couple of things that I'm real attached to. Like that scene, like the Boom Slug wasn't my idea, but the scene where Boom Slug explodes for the first time, like I was real attached to that one. The FM and Rig romance. But one of those things, and Juno, I called him in my outline Kitsen Yoda. And I was like, we need to have this character. It's so important to me. And Brandon's like, awesome. But that scene, it was in my very first outline. And like the plot has changed. Like many things changed. But I was like, I want to put Jorgen in a room with a bunch of diplomats. And it's super important. And then he explodes. And Brandon was like, well, he needs to lose control at some point.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so I was wondering, like, how you went about writing not only his struggle, like, with leadership and taking command, but particularly how he went about it in the wake of his parents' death. Because, I mean, he's grieving and he isn't sure how to deal with it, and yet he still has to, like, move on. He has to, like, not only process what happened, but also take command. And he can't mourn properly through any of that. So I was wondering like, how you approached writing that.
So some characters are much easier for me to write than others. FM I struggled with. I really struggled with her because she's very different from me, and trying to like connect to her and make her the agent of the story was very difficult because like Jorgen has the power, right? So it took me a long time to get her right. Jorgen, from when I read him in Skyward, he just clicks in my head. And I feel like some of that is that he's very similar to me. Like I remember being an 18-year-old who has never had a safe place to express emotion and has no idea how to do that in a healthy way, right? And so like it sort of like clicks in to all of this stuff that I really identify with. And so this was something I told Eric I want to talk about. I had a really hard time writing these books, and part of the reason was that I have an anxiety disorder, that's just like my normal life. And then these projects sort of kicked into all of my, like, I'm not good enough fears. And it just turned my anxiety into overdrive, which then bumped it into like cycling depression, which I hadn't had in years. It had been a long time. And I thought it must be like the pandemic, but no, I think it was the project. It's this huge like opportunity that I'm just terrified I'm going to fail at. Right. And so I had all of this like mental illness stuff just cycling in my head. And Jorgen also sort of has this like, I'm not good enough. I have to be responsible for all this. I have to get this right. I have to do this right, or consequences, right? And I was worried that I was putting that on the character. But if you go back and you look in Skyward, one of my favorite scenes with him is the one where he's in the mock pit trying to save his friends. And then he gets up and he slams his helmet against the wall, right? Like it's there. He's got this like tightly wound, like I have to be perfect or terrible things will happen energy.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
I was like right in there with him this last year. And so I just took all of that and I dumped it in the book. Like, and so when I was writing those scenes, like I was so there with him feeling the things, and it like dovetailed so nicely with what I was going through that it wrote very naturally. Those scenes just went down and they had very, very little revision. There were a lot of things in the books that I did revise a lot, but that it just went right down.
That's very cool. And it makes sense.
It makes sense.
I very much understand the perfection, especially, you know, like with Brandon, like if you're like, wow, he's written so many things. How cool is this? And just the stress of it.
Well, and the idea that I was going to write something that people were going to read, not like 12 people, but like thousands of people were going to read this. Like that's not, and writing in like a beloved series where like I could ruin things for people and I don't want to do that, you know, like I want to do justice to this. And like, yeah, so it was a lot.
Have you had trouble with this previously when writing, or is this kind of the first time that it's come up in this way for you?
It's been a long time. I had a lot of it in my 20s tied into this, and I did a lot of CBT, it's like cognitive behavioral therapy, and sort of evened out a lot after that. And then for most of my 30s, I didn't really have depression. And then this kicked it all back up again. I had a lot more tools than I did in my 20s to deal with it. But actually, this is the story I call how Jorgen put me in therapy. Because I had this going on in my head as I was writing Evershore, where like he's doing his I'm not good enough thing and I'm doing my I'm not good enough thing. And it's just like feeding on each other. And it was driving me a little nuts. Not a little nuts. It was driving me nuts. And there was one day where it was so bad. It was just so bad. And like the anxiety was just killing me. And I finally had this breaking point where I was like, you know what? I can't get help for him. I can't help him, but I can get help. And I finally like made the phone call and got myself back in therapy and made, I don't know if you guys have heard of EMDR. It's a like type of therapy where you hold buzzers or you listen to sounds back and forth and it moves trauma out of like parts of your brain where it's stuck. It's like above board. It sounds like witchcraft, but you can look it up. Prince Harry did it recently, and so a lot of people have heard of it from that. But the treatment was recommended to me 15 years ago, and I didn't do it because it sounded kind of awful to me to have to go do that. And it was kind of awful, but I finally called and I made the appointment, and I started in July when I was working on Evershore. I was at like a 9 out of 10 anxiety, day in, day out, 9 out of 10. And by the time Sunreach came out, I was at a 1. And now most days I'm at a 0. Like it like changed my brain. So I am super grateful to these books for finally pushing me over the edge and bringing it all back up again and making me go do it, because now I'm healthier on a day-to-day level than even that I was before it all came back. So
that's amazing. And you know, we don't want you to explode in any situation, but especially not to diplomats. So I mean, you can yeah.
To move to one of the other parts of these stories that like you really hold tightly to, the FM and Rig relationship. I really like this relationship. I think it is a very good depiction of teenagers in particular having a relationship. And I wanted to ask what it's like writing a relationship for teenagers versus writing a relationship for adults.
Really good question. So I have to say about FM and Rig, the first time I wrote it, I messed it up. It didn't work at all. So in the beta, the biggest comment that I had, and it was funny because I'm a romance writer, right? And I had never written space combat in my life. And so I'm super worried about the space combat, and I was less concerned about the romance. And then we go through the beta and they're like, so this is not good. this is not good at all. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think what went wrong was that I was holding back too much. Like, I didn't want to overwhelm Brandon's readers who are used to no romance with like a ton of romance, right? And so I was trying, and what I ended up with was this really static, it wasn't an arc, right? FM sort of like was confused about where Rig was at, and then she just remained confused, and then there's that scene in the middle, and now she's not confused anymore, and there just wasn't a lot of motion. And so I rewrote it based on my beta readers' feedback, and Darci Cole had a lot to do with that. She like, I sat there, like, I contacted her separately and was saying, okay, so like, is it this or is it this? And she looked at some stuff for me, and she really helped me like get that worked out so that it didn't take up a bigger portion of the book, but the emotion was there. And so that was really difficult. In terms of teenagers, I feel like one of the cool things about writing teenagers is that everything is new. Like for adults, like they've been through these things before, but when things are new, everything is heightened, and the smallest things are like bright and shiny and interesting. And so you can get a lot more mileage out of little things like holding hands and like, does he like me, and stuff that like once you're an adult, it has a lot less impact once you've been through those things before.
That's really interesting to hear, especially because I thought the romance, especially with FM and Rig, but I found the romance in all three of these I like the romances here better than Spence and Jorgen. Like I do. I definitely do. But I guess I didn't really like their romance in book one anyway. So that was always a little weird. But FM and Rig, I'm like, oh, I'm into this. This is good.
Yeah, it was adorable, like from the start. I like that you brought your strength into
Thank you.
Like, these stories. I'm still not sold on Alanik and Arturo, but Rig and FM were good.
I liked Arturo and Alanik, but
they're really controversial. I think it's interesting.
Yeah. I can see how, if you don't like have an arc for them, then it's just kind of boring.
Yeah, it just didn't work. And I didn't have the same problem with either of the other. Obviously, like, there's not a big arc for Jorgen and Spencer because she's not there. But I didn't have as much trouble with either of the others.
But I do really like how, like, even though Spencer is not there, you can still, like, feel the romance, like, from Jorgen, and, like, the way he thinks about Spencer. He's like, oh, I wish you were here. But, like, Spencer is there and Cytonic, except for the interludes, and a bit more because of those interludes. It wasn't there that much.
Spencer's got a lot going on.
Yeah. I really love
I think that from. Oh, those interludes are amazing.
Honestly, the interludes are like my favorite part of the book, except like the ending.
Mine too, but for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I read the interludes as he wrote them. I didn't read all of Cytonic for a while after, but I read the interludes as he wrote them because they were tying into what I was doing.
Right.
And we had this outline, and the outline originally had, for Sunreach, originally had FM and Jorgen in the Dulo, in the 2-seat ship.
Uh-huh.
And then, and Brandon wanted me to tie in this interlude that he was going to write. And I was like, great, I have it all in my outline. I hadn't written it yet because I wanted to read his interlude first. He sends me the interlude. And like, you can't put FM in that ship. And I was like, so Brandon, this is what was supposed to happen. And he was like, oh, well, I can change it. And I was like, no. Don't change a word. I will change it. This is like good romance. We're not killing the romance. Leave it.
I mean, those scenes are adorable with Spencer and Jorgen.
Yeah.
Then I ended up I put Rig in the duo instead, and that worked even better. So it was great.
That worked really well. Yeah. With the Spencer and Jorgen relationship, obviously that's going to continue on into book 4. And do you have any advice you would give to Brandon in terms of how to continue on the relationships that have been set up in book 4, both Rig FM, Arturo Alanik, Jorgen Spencer?
So with the other relationships, I think my hope is that he's just not going to mess with them. and leave them for me.
Defiant has a lot to do, so that seems actually pretty likely.
Probably it's likely, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my hope. And if he does something with them, then I will be honest with him about whether I think that's a good idea or not. He actually told me, he said this at the mini-con, that he's leaving some gaps for me, like that are going to say like, hey, Janci, rewrite FM's dialogue for me. You know her better than I do at this point, which is fine. I'm happy to do that. So there may be some of those, like what beat would go here in terms of like romance and stuff. I kind of expect him to ignore it because he ignores his own romances, right? He's not going to suddenly take an interest in mine, I don't feel like. Spencer and Jorgen, obviously he has to. And I have not read Defiant yet. I assume I'm going to get that after he does a pass on it. I've seen the outline, so I know what the plan is, but the plan doesn't always totally dovetail with what comes out.
Yeah. You got to have some discovery process when you write. It's like, oh, this is better than what I planned. Right?
Yeah. And Brandon's just kind of going to do what he's going to do. And then we'll go from there.
Your words have never been spoken.
That's right.
Brandon's gonna Brandon.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's gonna write extra things. He's gonna have some very interesting ideas. Like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. But at all.
Good thing he's brilliant.
Yeah. He's got the ideas all the time and does them well, generally. I am curious how the revision process went. And I think you've talked about this a little bit, but so you guys talked about the outlines, and you wrote the first draft.
Yeah.
And so how did things progress from there?
So I sent my first draft. Well, I sent my second draft to Brandon. As I write, I always have a list of all of the stuff that I already know is wrong with it. And I fixed all of that first. Right. Because, like, for example, in Evershore, I wrote the entire climax out of order. The ships all went out to the other islands almost first thing. After the Mindblade battle. And then the ships all go out to the other islands. And now we've got Kitsen just dying for like an hour. It's not great. God. And then I'm doing like lower tension stuff and Kitsen are dying. And as I'm writing this, I'm like, this is not right. The scenes themselves are good. But like, and then I just took it. I didn't send that to Brandon. I took it and I color coded it all and I cut and paste and I totally just reordered it all and then I went through and smoothed it out. So my second draft goes to Brandon. So I send my second draft to Brandon and then he does like a red line edit. It's a little more than most of the editors I've worked with will do in that some of them he'll go in and he'll say, I would do this like this and rewrite like 5 or 6 lines for me, which I think is great because then I don't have to do it. But mostly he's just leaving me like doing like copy edit type stuff where he's like cutting words or like, and then leaving me comments to say like, I don't think this is working great, I don't think this piece belongs here, and then again dumping more ideas in and being like, what if we did it like this? And I'm like, okay. These ideas are good because there are a lot of them. And then I took his red line edit and then revised the manuscript.
Interesting. So he never like did a draft. He just went through the whole draft. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and he's a little more hands-on than your average editor. Like I've never had an editor actually rewrite prose for me unless it was like a line edit, like put this clause before this clause type stuff. I've had editors do that. Right. Christy does a lot of that when she's line editing. But this was more like content, like your presentation would be better this way. Or he would take something and say like, you have it in this order. And he calls it the Brandon way to do this would be to do it in this order. So you have this dramatic beat. And like every time I agreed with all of them. There was never anything. The only notes that I ignored really of his, there were a couple of things where I was like, he just forgot what the continuity is. That's not right. Because he has a lot of continuity to keep track of. And this is like not like the Cosmere one. He's like right in with the nitty gritty and all of it. Right. This is much looser. And then there were some notes on the romance. Like, for example, he was like, do we really need to know that FM thinks that Rig has a crush on Spencer? And I was like, yes. The answer to your question is yes. Yeah. So I ignored some of that. But most of the stuff where he's like reorganizing things, I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's so much better. And then I do it his way because he's good at this.
Were there like a few rounds of that or just one round? Just one
for each book. So it's kind of funny because then it went to beta and edit simultaneously because we were on a really tight schedule. I didn't love doing edit and beta in the same draft, but I did. And then, so some of the like more nitpicky stuff, I'm not sure that he even knows how it ended up. Because like occasionally he'll be like, isn't it like this? And I'm like, no, that was in the draft you read, but now it's not like that anymore. So I think Defiant continuity might be interesting.
Oh my
fun.
God.
Great.
Yeah.
That's what betas are for, I think.
Yeah, that's what betas are for.
Yeah. I'm not worried at all about it. Can't you see
By
in
the
my
time
face?
it gets to print, it will be fine.
It'll be totally fine.
We have a team for this.
That's just very interesting. But that's an interesting revision process that I guess I didn't expect because I thought he did like a whole draft. But I mean,
like he doesn't have time.
He's a busy guy. He's a very, very busy guy.
Yeah.
I think, frankly, that it's genuinely incredible to me that the two styles of like Brandon's writing and your writing then like really gelled together in the series. Like they feel, I mean, they're not the same, right? But they feel like a cohesive whole to me. I've heard like a few people say that that's not true, but I felt like it fit really well and read really easily personally. So it's just kind of funny because Brandon didn't do like a full draft. Obviously there's Brandon words in there, right? But
yeah. There's a few, not a lot. Like mostly he was just giving me feedback on more the larger picture and then doing like some little stuff.
I mean, that's the more useful feedback generally.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the stage that it's at when he sees it is the story. And I think even in his own writing, he's more focused on story than he is on prose. Like those are just his priorities and that works out very well for him.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
Speaking of the beta process, you mentioned before that the romance in Sunreach was something that came out as this needs to be looked at further, this needs fixing. Was there any other big things like that
in the beta
came back to you?
I'm trying to remember I think with ReDawn, I really struggled writing ReDawn. And I think by the time it went to beta, I had the plot. That was the one where I was emailing a lot with Brandon being like this, like I had a hard time gelling Alanique and her goals with why she needs pilots and Skyward Flight. And I remember emailing with Brandon and being like, they have to be the answer to her problem and she has to be the answer to theirs and it's not lining up. And I did a lot of work on that, but I think that was all before I went to beta because I was real aware of those issues. In Evershore, the planet appears and I had like some flooding happening. And then in the beta, like people were like, I think that this would have like some more effect on the planet. You need to work on it. And so I added some more consequences. That might've been when I added the flooding. Might not have even had very much flooding before that. And I added some more stuff. And then I turned in the final draft and we'd done continuity. Brandon had read it. It had been edited. We'd been through everything. And Peter did some actual research that none of us had done. It was amazing. And he was like, so none of this is right. This is not what would happen if a planet like came into orbit. And like, this is not hard science fiction, right? But we need to be in the ballpark.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And like, I had sort of vaguely known that like planets rip each other apart, but I was kind of hoping to just get away with it. And I did not. And so we were in the final, like, this is due in a week final copy to the publisher. And Peter's like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, no, I got it. And Brandon had the brilliant idea about the grav caps on the planet. So this is like last minute. He's like, we can just put grav caps on the planet. And I was like, okay, I've got all this flooding. So I need to do something in between so I don't have to go back at this stage and cut out all the flooding. No one else is going to read this. I'll make too many mistakes. And so I went in and I sort of massaged it and got it to all sort of line up where we had consequences and we had grav caps and we had all the things. And then Peter read it again just to catch any like issues that I caused sentence wise when I was cutting and pasting things and moving things around that late in the game.
Easy errors
so
to
that
make.
was like last minute.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite lines in Evershore, where it's like, well, as soon as the planet teleported, I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. And then like a couple paragraphs later, it's like the title authority is like, please move your planet. We're going to experience massive flooding if one of our planets doesn't rip the other in half first. I'm like, it's so funny because it's such like a straight delivery.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's like the planet has grav caps.
I thought that was so smart. They have this technology, and if you're like bringing a planet around places, they would have run into this problem before. So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between hard SF and this is that we have magic and essentially magical technology like craft caps.
Right,
it's just like, great, cool, nice.
Yeah, and we don't have to know how they work necessarily because it's not hard SF. Yeah.
And I imagine that will never come up, how they work either.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You mean that's not the plot of one of the future books you're going to write?
Riggs making a better version of grav caps and going into it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The science is not my strong point. One of the betas, Jaden, he's a fighter pilot. And so he fixes all the flying.
Right.
So that it's like, he's like, this is not how. And in November, Jaden came out to MiniCon and I sat down and I was like, okay, I've read Skyward. I've done a little bit of research, but you got to explain how G-forces work to me. He gave me this whole lesson and I was like, oh, that's what's happening. He'll still probably be fixing it.
Yeah. But I mean, when you're writing so many things, like research time's very precious.
It is. Yeah. Yes.
Yep. Easier to just have someone explain it to you.
Mm-hmm. That's what the experts are for.
Yep.
And that's why you have beta experts.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite moment in any of the 3 books that stands out as just like your favorite moment to happen in the book?
It's the scene where Jorgen explodes. I love that. I love that chapter. I was looking forward to writing it the whole time, and then I just love how it turned out. And then the
it's a great scene.
After. The conversation after too.
I loved the conversation with Jorgen and FM. FM's like, we need to talk. We very clearly need to talk. And
their relationship was something that wasn't in my outline, any of the outlines at all. And when Brandon had read about half of ReDawn and we were talking about Evershore, and I had some things in the Evershore outline. And he was like, who you need to use for this is FM, because they have this relationship that you built that I wasn't like, I knew I had built a relationship there, but I hadn't thought it all the way through because it wasn't in the outline. It just sort of like evolved. And then I was really happy with the way all of that turned out.
Yeah, it really tied the series together, I felt, because that relationship evolved in all 3 novellas. So that was an excellent, like, it tied them all together. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also nice to have such a strong, like, male-female friendship like that, because there aren't that many out there. So.
Yeah.
Particularly in Brandon's books. I throw some shade.
Yeah.
We're super fans. We're allowed.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
It's important to know. I think on a stream, people are like, why are you guys trashing on Alloy? I'm like, no, we're not saying Alloy of Law is bad. It's just we're super fans, and that doesn't mean that we can't critique the things we liked or didn't like. We've done hundreds of episodes and videos and things. We're here. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, no, I'm a super critical person. I rip apart the stuff I love all the time. So you guys can ask me the tough questions if you want. I'm not going to be offended if you're like, I don't like how you did this. What was happening here? Go ahead.
I mean, Jess, I know you have an Evershore comment.
Well, I was actually going to go off that because I know that I was talking to you directly about it. Yeah. But I'm interested about the inclusion of the Lifebuster, because I thought that was a wonderful tie-in back to the first book that had just kind of disappeared and been left behind. And when it turned up, I was super excited, even though it's this terrifying bomb that's coming to kill them all. So I just wanted to ask about where that idea came from, how that got included.
Yeah, that wasn't in my original outline either. But when I'm like sort of doing my nitty gritty, what's going to happen in this battle right before I write it, sort of outlining, I was trying to think of, okay, the way that I usually plot fight scenes is I look at what are our assets, what are their assets, what does it make sense for them to do, what does it make sense for us to do, and then I try and like mesh them together, because I want to make sure that first of all, that the battle is interesting and not just we shoot, because space combat, it's all I fly and I shoot, right? Like, we gotta have something interesting out there.
Battles are hard to ever written.
I'm just gonna be taking notes for my aerial combat in my book, taking notes.
Well, and
I'm not even dealing with aerial combat.
Yeah.
The advice that Brandon gave me is you always want to have something cool that they have to interact with so that every battle is different. right? And so when I got to the end of Sunreach and I was ready to write that battle, I actually texted Brandon and I was like, I have no ideas, but I need to make this awesome. And I know your brain is full of ideas. Give me some awesome space battle ideas. And he texted me 3 of them. And one of them was a giant space monster. And I was like, done. And the other 2 I wrote down and I will use them another time. I haven't used them yet, but I will.
Later novellas.
Yes. But so as I was doing that, I was like, this was like their main tactic. It would be super useful here. I can't not have one show up because the superiority haven't just forgotten that these things exist, right? Just because one was defeated one time doesn't mean they're never going to bring them. And it wasn't really relevant when we had like the shield, when we had like in ReDawn.
Sure, right.
It wasn't super relevant. Like that's not necessarily the best way to go at taking them out. But so I felt like they had to bring one. And the risk that I felt like I was taking was that I don't want to undercut what Spensa did. And so my intent, and whether this came out on the page or not, my intent was that Spensa was the pioneer. Spensa figured out how we deal with these things. And so then when the thing shows up, we know what to do. It's still scary to do it because if Alani gets the timing right, she's going to die, right? But like, we know Spensa did it before. Now we have cytonics. We know how to use them. It's not like a sudden like development for us to know that we can teleport the thing out. And so that was the intention. I don't know how well I succeeded at that, but that was the thought process.
It did work for me. Like the comparison like we used in our Evershore reaction pod episode was like when you have at the beginning of a video game like a final boss and then later on you encounter the same creature but it's a mid-level mook. So right. It was a kind of like, oh yes, this was this big scary thing but we know how to deal with it now. So it's like, but I didn't actually put in the thought of like, oh yeah, like Spensa explicitly figured out what you need to do. They can just do the same thing again.
Especially because they know how the teleporting works now in much more detail.
Right.
I do love the ending of Evershore though. That just so much happens. I love it. Like it's you know, Brandon loves his Brandon avalanches, and so this is just a giant avalanche, and I always love those. They're so good.
I loved all of the slugs showing up.
That was end. I'm like, very
it's my favorite. Great. It's one of my favorite tropes. I'm like, it will get me every single time. It's like so good.
And then you get the planet teleporting.
I don't know why I did not anticipate how popular the slugs were going to be. Yeah. If I had, I would have made sure to like use every single like is it Twist never appears again after Sunreach? Like because I did not realize that this was going to be the thing that everyone is here for. And I'd already written Evershore by the time Sunreach came out, and like I discovered that this is what everyone wants. And so yeah,
there's
a surprise. Next time. Awesome surprise. Yeah, next time.
There's a big pro slug fan base on the 17 chart Discord,
which is awesome.
Yes.
Well, it's like when you first joined the Discord, like I woke up the following morning to a lot of hubbub about like some slug rebellion or something. I'm just like, what
I saw the compromise page for that.
The silly one,
because Tom fan sent it to me. Yeah.
I take full responsibility for writing that.
That was awesome.
It off with a bang in the fandom.
Yes. I think you were thinking of having a slug named Hoyd.
Yeah. So I asked Brandon on the stream, and he said yes. So I'm super excited. I'd already written Evershore at that point, right? So like I didn't get to do it in this set, but future books, Darci and I have plans.
Yeah, because Darci was saying that she was, like, you and her talked a lot about these, which is why you're bringing her on.
Yes, yeah. Like, it was one of those, like, I wrote the books, like, in this, like, when we do future books, she will do writing. But she was, like, after I met her in the Sunreach beta, and when we were talking about the FM romance, like, we got to be friends. And then, like, the problem that I had before I did the beta was that I was writing these books sort of in a vacuum because like I say, like I co-write because I'm happier when I'm working with people, but working with Brandon is a lot like working alone because I can't get a hold of him all the time, right? Like it's a co-writership in the sense of like, these ideas are not mine, all of that. And that is wonderful, but I don't get the social energy from him, and I'm never going to, right? And so I was, and like, no one I knew had even read the books. And so it was the pandemic, so I didn't have a lot of opportunity to talk to people. And so a couple of people close to me, I was like, you have to read this because I need someone to talk to. Actually, one of them was my 9-year-old daughter. I had the books and I was like, I'm reading these books. She's a big reader. And I was like, these books, they're on the harder side for you, but if you read them, I need somebody to talk to. And she immediately was like, Mom wants to talk to me about a book. And took the books off and read them. So she was my sounding board for when I was outlining and things. It was really fun.
Oh, that's cute.
For the most part, I didn't have anybody in my life who really cared about the world, And so it was pretty lonely. And then the beta starts up and I wasn't even really aware of what the beta process was. Brandon was like, do you want to do a Sanderson beta? And I was like, hey, more eyes is good. Sure. And then Peter hooks me up with all this stuff. And I'm like, this is insane. The spreadsheet is nuts. I had a little mini panic attack of what did I get myself into? And then I get added to this Facebook group and I'm like, people want to talk about these books. And they're all like, we don't want to take up too much of your time. And I'm like, no, be my friends. Literally what happened. And so Darci and I got to be friends. And it was just so nice to have somebody to be excited about what I was doing with me. And I could be like, so I've got this scene and I think this is what I'm going to do with it. And she'd be like, that's awesome. And it was just really good. It was awesome. And it helped drive some energy into the process that I was having all this anxiety and depression about.
Right.
It was awesome.
That makes sense. And for those of you who don't know, yes, the Sanderson betas are an entire production. I need to look at the Dawn Shard one from the Kickstarter because I haven't had time, but I really want to look at it. Just so anyone knows, the amount of words in the Oathbringer beta was longer than Oathbringer. And I think that happened in Rhythm of War as well.
The process is so cool, though. There's, I guess for people who don't know, there's a whole spreadsheet and they number the paragraphs of the chapter. So they number them and then you put your comments. And so I don't even have to look back at the book most of the time. I just read down the spreadsheet and it's like being inside of people's minds as they're reading the book. And every once in a while there'll be one that I'm like, I don't know what that's referring to and I have to go look. But for the most part, it's just it's like being a passenger in people's brains while they're reading. It is so cool. It is so interesting because I did a lot of reactions for Rhythm of War. I still have those on a doc somewhere. And right now that I'm reading The Black Company and I have reactions for those chapter by chapter. Mm-hmm. And I always wondered how there are a couple of other people I know that do that for other series. Someone that did it for the Cosmere and now Wheel of Time. And it's always strange to be like, okay, wait, this happens in this chapter and this happens in this chapter because it all blended for me. So I always I don't know what chapter things happen. It's just the book. And so, hearing you describe it like that is so interesting. And let's look at that Dawn Shard beta even more. And there's always end of chapter reactions. You always have to write those. And end of book reaction too.
Yep.
Which is super helpful. Yes. And I don't know how. I'm just in awe of Peter and his team taking that for a Stormlight book. And then implementing it. It was overwhelming for me with these, and they're only 60,000 words.
Well, Stormlight is done by part. It has to be.
Still, that's just so much feedback.
So much feedback to distill down to useful things.
Yeah, exactly. What I did is I actually printed them. I printed out the whole spreadsheet and then I took a highlighter and I highlighted everything that was actionable because a lot of it, and I don't want people to stop doing this, a lot of it is yay, this is awesome, I love this, squee, which is great when I'm reading it. But when I'm working, I don't want to see that. Right? I want it and then I don't want it anymore. And so I just highlight things and then I go through and just pull out the highlighted page. What am I doing in this chapter? And I deal with the actionable stuff. And that worked pretty well. But Stormlight book is orders of magnitude more. So
yeah, it's not just that it's 4 times longer than a regular book. It's also just all the continuity and other work that you have to do.
Yeah.
That must be hard.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And things still get wrong in the final product, even though tons of people have seen it. Because it's also very fast to do all that. And sometimes you don't know what is the continuity error far in advance necessarily. And then you're like, oh no, this is wrong.
Some things you pick up by accident because you happen to be looking at 2 different things randomly. You're like, hang on a minute. hang on, these things, they do not work together. And you never would necessarily pick up on them just by doing a single read through and then seeing them individually. So
but I don't know how they distill down the beta comments to useful things, because that is
I'm really interested in that process. I'm gonna have to ask Peter sometime how he does that.
I forget her name. There's a person who really pares a lot of it down into useful things. Sorry, I forgot your name. I know I'd instantly recognize the name on in the Dragonsteel team, but I totally forgot.
I just have one more thing to say about the Dragonsteel team. Something that people don't necessarily I think fully appreciate is Brandon's team is incredible. Everyone gives Brandon all the credit for being able to write so fast, but I am an indie author. I have to do on my own books everything myself, and the production takes so much time, and I'm not as good at it as they are, right? But Peter and Karen, she's Brandon's continuity editor, and just the whole they have this huge team, and everyone is so good, and that is at least 50% of why Brandon can do what he does. Because production is so involved, and it takes so much effort and time, and if it's wrong, people notice. Right? If things are not done correctly, people don't necessarily appreciate how much it affects their experience, stuff going from first draft to production, because they've never seen the first drafts. They saw the first drafts, they would. And so I was so grateful to work with that team. They are incredible.
Yeah, the difference between Elantris and Mistborn to Brandon is starting to hire people to do these things. It's a big quality increase. I was reading The Well of Ascension Leatherbound, and I found an error. Just because those didn't go through the same continuity and editing that Brandon does now.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to see what it's like to go from first draft to final draft for Brandon, Wallbreaker is on Brandon's site with every single draft.
Oh, yeah.
If you feel reading through Wallbreaker 5 times.
He made changes. He posted that live for the internet to see.
Yeah,
that's how I first found the Warbreaker. Well, years after, so it was the final draft, but I found it because he'd posted it on the internet for everyone. And I was like, I've heard of this author. This author's on my TBR. I didn't think I'd find this author because you can't find English books easily here.
Right.
I was incredibly surprised when the other day I went to the bookshop. It isn't even one of the good ones. It has this reputation, but there is nothing at least in the things that I like to read, there's nothing ever. And then I saw literally all of the Wheel of Time and literally almost all of Brandon's books, but they were there, and I was like, oh my god.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
So that's what an adaptation will do for you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And also, if you want to see the revision process with Brandon's notes going along with it, if you backed the Way of Kings Kickstarter, he posted all the Darnchard drafts and beta comments. If you want to see it, they're all anonymized, and you can check those out if you did that. And it's interesting to see. So, Janci, how many drafts total were there? So there was that Brandon draft. You put in that feedback and then baited it?
Yeah. So it was my first draft that I wrote, and then my pass to fix all the stuff I already knew about, and then Brandon's is number 3, and then beta and edit at the same time, beta and line edit. Brandon was basically being my content editor. And then beta and line I would do simultaneously. I don't like doing it that way, but because it's a lot of changes, but we had to because of the schedule. We didn't have enough time. And then after that, I turn in what's essentially my final, and then they do gamma on it. So that's 5, I think.
Yes.
I would prefer to have done 6, but we did 5.
Right.
Yeah, just because of the schedule.
Yeah, I can understand why your anxiety got very high. I'm feeling anxiety just hearing about how busy the schedule is. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and this was not all I was doing. Right. I still have commitments to my other series, and so I was also putting out books for other things at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a mom and my kids do online school. So
yeah, so you have a lot to do there too.
Madness. Yeah, it was crazy. I never want to do that again. Not again. My whole goal for this year is to slow down. It's like my only goal. Slow down.
That's the best New Year's resolution, really.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, hopefully this time around you have more time with future Skyward books, seeing as you already know that you're going to be doing them and can start working on them whenever. So
we had talked about doing for Defiant what we did for Cytonic, and doing the 3 novellas right around it. And that's why it's one of the reasons why Evershore ends before, like way before Cytonic ends. It's weeks before. I wanted to do that. The final Evershore was the final interlude with Jorgen and Spensa. I would love to have gotten to that. But the reason I didn't was because we were thinking about doing these novellas, and Defiant is probably picking up right after Cytonic, so I wouldn't have space in there to do it. And so we left me a space to write those books. And then I started doing math and about when my likely deadlines would be. And I realized that it would require me to work every bit as hard this year as I worked last year, and I couldn't do it. And so I went to Brandon and I was like, I'm real worried about this. And he said, let's just do more books after. And I was like, thank you. I can breathe now. I might do a big crunch like that. I say never again. It's possible I will do something like that again in my life, but I need to give myself a break first.
That sounds like a really good idea, because that sounds very stressful. Will the later Skyward books that you're working on with Darci, are they going to be branded novellas? Are they just going to call them novels at that stage, because they're really novels anyway?
So that has not been announced what we're doing. So I know the answer to that, but Refo.
See, Heroes, I was like, do you want to talk about these things? That's totally fine if not.
You can ask me more questions about them, because I would love to talk about them, but I can't answer everything.
Okay.
We were speculating on possible POV characters for that during our Evershore episode, and they are some interesting options.
Who are you speculating about?
So we were thinking, Vapor, because Figment POVs.
We want more Figments.
We want more Figments. Hesho was another option.
And I wanted Kimmelin. Oh my God,
Kimmelin. I want Kimmelin
of course.
So badly.
I feel like Kimmelin was a character that you just needed to say, okay, I can't do an arc for everyone. And Kimmelin was like intentionally someone you couldn't do that, and who's there, and that's great, but doesn't have a big arc.
If I had time and permission to do these as full Skyward novels, because they are novels. We call them novellas. Originally, it was for rights reasons. Now the publisher's involved, so the rights reasons went away. We call them novellas because they're shorter than the other books, and we don't want people to expect Skyward novels, right? But if I had been able to do that, then I totally would have spent a lot more time with Kimmelin and Ned, and like developed Sadie and T-Saw and Catnip. Like, I think people are totally justified in being like, but I wanted more of this and I wanted more of that, and she didn't develop this and she didn't develop that. These are twice as long as they were supposed to be. So there's a lot of stuff I wanted to develop too, and would love to develop in the future.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if Brandon's working on a Stormlight book, he cannot do everything. Like, even that amount of space, he cannot do it.
Yeah, and he doesn't, like, having a co-writer takes a lot of time off of his, like, the work that I do reduces the footprint on his schedule a lot, but it doesn't reduce it to 0. And I've told him, like, I can't write these books without him, because I need access to those ideas. Like, I'm just not capable of doing that. And so I do require something of him that makes it that we're pretty limited in what we can do.
That makes sense.
I guess one question I have that you're probably not going to be able to answer, because and not knowing what the status of the universe is going to be after Defiant. Are you more looking at like focusing on the characters we know, or like expanding the universe beyond detritus and all of those humans? Like,
so I think I can answer that. When we were talking about that, Brandon gave me some advice that I want to say he got it from Tom Doherty. The Tom Doherty told him the advice is that the series is the characters. And so Brandon said, if you want people to follow you forward in a series, you continue with the same characters. There's a huge, and I don't know, like, numbers wise, but I know that there's a drop off between Mistborn Era 1 and Mistborn Era 2 because we lost those same characters. If it had been about those same people, more people would have come forward. And so because of that, it's not to say we'll never jump somewhere else in the universe, but like this is not the moment to do that if we want people to continue reading, which we do. And I have lots more I would love to do with some of these people. So
just a T-stall novella, just all about T-stall. Like, what does that mean, though?
Well, and the twist at the end is he's catnip.
that was hilarious.
Same person.
Was like, or was it catnip? Like that was.
Are they?
So
do you know? Are they brothers? Are they best friends? Are they boyfriends? Okay.
Well, I mean, they are friends, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're not anything else. I'm not saying they are. I'm not saying they aren't. That's something we should probably talk about. Is the lack of LGBT characters.
Yes.
Yeah. When I approach, I've written in other people's settings a lot. In fact, all of the books I've co-written were other people's settings and ideas because I'm not the idea person. And when I approach writing in someone else's world, the first thing I do is look at what's been set up and I sort of build myself a mental box of these are the parameters of what we're doing. And I'm not going to try to jump, especially with something like this with an existing audience, way outside the parameter box, right? And with Brandon, there's some stuff that's really like explicit. This is funny, given what I'm going to say. I understand the sexual content, like limitations, and I would not try to jump outside of those in a Brandon book, right? The swearing limitations. Although now I understand that there are some books that aren't inside those limitations, so I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, the original definitely had swearing, but
what's up with that?
That is Mary Robinette Cole.
Yeah, I guess
she apparently doesn't do a parameter box in her head like I do. That's fine. Good for her.
I mean, maybe it's an audio original, so like not too many people would read it. So it's like, it'll probably be fine. I don't know.
But like. And now people can fight me on this, but for the most part, there just aren't LGBT characters in his work. Like, I feel like when people try to explain to me where there are, I'm like, that's real subtle and not very important to the plots. And
because he gets to do it accidentally.
Yeah, and I understand that this is like possibly going to change and stuff, but I feel like what's on the page is what matters at this moment. So it didn't even occur to me that it was an option to have LGBT characters. Because it wasn't inside the parameter box of what I had, right? And then we did the beta. And when we did the beta, I became aware that there was a lot of demand for this in the audience, which I wasn't aware of before. And so then knowing that, I went to Brandon and said, okay, so tell me what the parameters are for this. We didn't talk about it explicitly. I just assumed based on what was there. And he said, no, absolutely, you can write LGBT characters. And I was like, oh, that's good to know. But at that point, I'd already written Sunreach, and I had the point of view character set, and obviously Jorgen has an existing relationship, so I didn't have any leeway with him. And I was so uncomfortable making the first LGBT character in the Cytoverse and Alien. I was just like, no, right? Like that just didn't feel respectful to me. That felt real problematic. And so that's why there aren't. And like, I didn't want to do like some side queer baity thing, right? And so that's why there aren't any in these, but we're aware of it, and I'm really excited about what we have planned.
There's a line in ReDawn, and I actually asked Brandon a question about this in my Cytonic copy from Kimberlyn, and he confirmed it for my question that she is queer, which I am like over the moon
I
about.
remember that.
And I am really looking forward to at some point this probably coming up and being a thing in the story. But I remember getting to that scene and I was like jumping for joy because I was like, she's queer. I know she's queer. I can see the overturns. I spent my life looking for them.
I was so happy to see people pick up on that.
Yeah, not everyone will, but
and that's
definitely
fine.
some will.
That's fine.
Yeah. Ooh. So are the future Skyward things after Defiant, are they going to be set after Defiant specifically?
Yes. Yes. I had to think because there have been several plans. There was like when we were doing Novellas, we talked about doing one before, we talked about doing one during, but no, it's going to be after.
Interesting. I'm trying to think of other questions that can even be asked about it, because, like, obviously,
because there's not a lot.
Yeah.
No,
Brandon mentioned when he was doing his live blog of writing the end of Defiant, how there were multiple POV characters, so that I was like, how is that going to tie into the novellas? Which characters are they going? I mean, I assume Jorgen, but maybe
probably.
somebody else.
I don't even know.
I mean, Brandon's doing the typical, it's the final battle. We have to switch into everyone's heads and things.
Yeah. So I am really curious about that and how it will affect the novellas. But
which, by the way, I loved Jorgen just like cytonically communicating with everyone. That was a great way to coordinate the battle. Like, we have the magic, like, let's just do that, because otherwise it'd just be confusing. I like that.
Yeah, I was excited to win. So Brandon wanted Jorgen to end up in command. And to me, what was set up, these were like the parameters that I was talking about earlier, that I didn't have as much freedom, which is fine with me. But when reading the first 2 books, I had a really hard time wrapping my mind around how I was going to make that his happy ending, because that seems antithetical to what was set up. And I thought about it a lot, and like sort of like, why does he end up? And one of the ideas that Brandon had was the like super communication makes him still able to use powers, even like if he's behind a desk, right? Which is, I thought was a really good addition. And then I tried to like build an arc that like got him from this very different place that he is in Skyward to, and then he's still not super happy about it.
I mean,
I love that scene.
It is a bit like, in some sense, it's a bit preposterous to have like it's like, oh yeah, the kids are in charge. Like, okay, the YA tropey. I still loved it though, even though like if you look at it from afar, like, does this really make sense? I don't know. It's cool enough that it makes sense to me.
I was hoping that the sense that these kids are literally the only ones who understand the powers of what's happening makes us have at least a justification for why that's happening.
And they're also the only ones that have actually made alliances
with
alien species. Like, it makes sense, but it's just like, this is definitely a YA series. It's
some things, and I know you haven't listened to our Evershore episode. I also know that you rarely listen to any thing like that, so I was very surprised you listened to the Sunreach and ReDawn ones.
Yeah, I don't engage with reviews because I feel like it's not a healthy thing to do, like obsessing over what's wrong with your book when it's already out and you can't fix it. Yeah. But you guys are so, like, even when you say critical things, like, you say them and I'm like, yeah, no, that's a thing. Yep. It's awesome.
Like, I think one of the things Alla was saying is like, she just doesn't like everyone being paired up. And so that is a reason why with Arturo and Alanik. And I'm like, I mean, that makes sense for me in a YA series. Yeah. Like, that is typically the thing that happens, I feel like.
And I will say that in the future, like, I feel like I see a lot of speculation, which speculation is awesome. And before the book is published, everybody's right? But a lot of speculation about who's going to be paired up with who. But looking to the future, I am looking to, and I think Darci agrees with me, pair people up with people who are not in the flight. So it's not like everyone, like, we have like this flight that is just the set of couples, right? And like Alanik sort of did that, idea. And like Riggs outside the flight somewhat, but I would like to get farther out. Yeah. And so I feel like people have a lot of ships that they're really attached to, and it's not that I don't think they would be wonderful, but I have an inability to suspend disbelief so far as to believe that everyone's perfect match was sitting right here in this flight. Exactly. Flight school, right? Like, we gotta branch out a little bit at some point.
Here's a free idea: have a human resonant romance with those rocks. You know, in Cytonic.
or talk about that in Evershore.
Or a human figment romance. Easy. Just like, they're definitely not in the flight. Easy peasy.
They're definitely not in the flight. Yet. They're not in the flight yet.
I feel like if you want some free ideas, just like ridiculous romances, how would that work? No idea. I have no idea.
I feel like I was pushing it with Arturo and Alanik.
Yeah. I think that's part of the why Ian and Alla were just like,
Yeah, which is, I get it.
Yeah, I liked it.
So kind of unrelated to what you were talking about before, but I mean, still Cytoverse. I was wondering, how did you approach writing the UrDail and the Kitsen cultures and like the clash between like their cultures and the human ones? Because that is like one of my favorite parts of ReDawn and Evershore.
So back in the beginning, when like Brandon and I didn't quite understand each other and each other's work habits as well as we do now, Brandon was like, "And you can make this culture whatever you want," and I was like,
I would really like some parameters, please. Thanks.
Okay. And so I really liked the like elven connection where she's Olenik is described as elfin.
Yeah.
And so I sort of ran with that, and I based my original ideas for ReDawn. My original ideas was trees that were planted in sort of like an ocean, and like the roots are down under the water and they move around on this ocean. And I based that on if anybody's played Elder Scrolls, Valenwood is like the wood elf cities, and there hasn't been, I haven't played the MMORPG, but in the main games there hasn't been like a main game set there, but the lore is that the trees move around, so their cities travel around, and I always thought that was such a cool idea. And so I pitched that to Brandon, and he said, well, if you want cool space battles, you'll put them in space instead and like suspend them on chunks of acclivity stone. And I was like, you are right. That is exactly what I will do.
It's a cool idea though, the trees in the ocean.
So cool.
But yeah, if you want it in space, yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, I was like, no, obviously that's what we should do. And then I think he threw out make it a gas giant and have them suspended. And so then I went and did a bunch of research on gas giants and stuff, and people like to be like, well, gravity would be like this, gravity would be like that, and at least as far as I read, gravity on a gas giant widely varies and can be anything. So like, yeah, it's a little coincidental that every planet we go to, the gravity is within like this range of human comfort, but it's also fiction, and I'm not going to deal with that for an entire book. So maybe someday.
That's a later book. That's a later book.
Yeah. It could be cool if that was like the concept for the setting, is we go someplace and like maybe we lose our ships, but like we have these totally different gravity limitations and we're throwing ourselves all over. That could be awesome. But that's like a world concept that didn't really fit with the plots that I had. Right.
Yeah. I really like the illustration that Heather, who is Between Sky and Sea on Discord, did for that. It's amazing.
Oh yeah.
The fan art is so fun.
Oh man, she's great.
Riffing off that, because ReDawn also has a reference to Tolkien in it.
Yes.
And there was some disagreement on the timing of that connection. Was Tolkien a Cytonic?
So in my mind, this is not canon, so it could change because not on the page. In my mind, what happened was not that Tolkien was a Cytonic, but that Tolkien knew UrDail Cytonics who had come to Earth. That was my intention. And that like the old elven myths that he was working from were inspired by UrDail Cytonics, and then different UrDail Cytonics long later met Tolkien, and he based his stuff on them.
I was both wrong and right. So
this is what I thought you meant. So I am pleased I got that right.
Awesome.
I look at you being, it's not on the page, so it's not canon. Like
it's not on the page, so it's not canon. Like it might change. Even in the stuff that I write, it might change. A lot of times stuff does change because it's like, what do we need it to be to fit this story? Right. And did we say anything in the past that contradicted that? No. So that's what it is now. Right. So these things can change.
That's always what I want people to remember about Words of Brandon, is that these things can change. And that's important.
Yeah, for sure.
And a lot of people are like, this is canon. It's like, well,
yeah, if it's not on the page, even if Brandon says it, like, I feel like I was an English major. The author is dead. Right. So like, I can tell you what my intention was, but it's no more valid than your interpretation.
That's my argument with pronunciation. Like, I'll just pronounce it however I want.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So you've said before, like, you like working in other people's worlds. And Brandon has a very large world that he is hesitant to let other people work in. Like, he's like mentioned the possibility of Isaac writing it. Yeah. But let's say Brandon decides he's giving you the opportunity to pitch a Cosmere novel. What would your pitch be?
Okay. So I have to preface this. I answered this question a couple of times at the con, and I always say, because I feel like rumors are going to get around, I am not writing in the Cosmere. I've not been offered the Cosmere. There has not even been wind of a suggestion that I would ever write in the Cosmere. So this is not happening. Okay. I love Mistborn. Mistborn's my favorite. Hero of Ages is probably my favorite book of all time. I love that magic system. It's my very favorite. And so I would love to write a book in that someday. And I think it would be really awesome to do like because the Cosmere gets real complicated, and I'm not sure that I would want to deal with like later Cosmere things I don't even understand yet are happening things. But I think it would be really cool. They put out the Mistborn trilogy as young adult books. But they're not, right? I mean, they're not young adult, but they shelved them in young adult, but they're not young adult.
I can see with Vin, like I can sort of see what they're going with, but yeah, it's a little odd too. I feel like it was justified to do it. I don't think it was a bad move at all, but they're not like people. I don't want people reading those and thinking that's what YA is. It is not at all like that. There's too many adults in it. The issues are not adolescent enough. Like it's just not YA. I think it would be awesome to do a Mistborn story that is YA, that's like early, maybe pre-Mistborn, like something that's not quite so tied into like the future of the Cosmere, and that also could then serve as a bridge for those readers to read that and then jump into the adult Mistborn stuff. I think that would be awesome.
That sounds like a great idea.
Classical Scadrial young Alendi. Let's go. YA Alendi. Sounds amazing. But see, the thing with that is there are so many restrictions in Cosmere things.
Yeah. And trying to deal with Cosmere continuity gives me, I had a hard time with Cytoverse, like that would be really hard. Brandon has a team though, and they're good at it. But as I said before, this is not happening. This is
unless
just like
we convince Brandon to make it happen.
Maybe eventually, long time from now, maybe. Who knows? Brandon has so many ideas, and he will have more ideas than time to write them.
Yeah. Well, and when Brandon asked me if I will do something, I say yes. And then I worry about the consequences later. That's how I am. He's like when he asked me if I would write the Bastille book, and he was like, you can think about it. And I was like, let me think. Yes. Yes, I will do that. Yes. You got anything else for me? Yes. So...
Yep, that makes sense.
I figure right now my job is to, like, I proved that I can write a Brandon book. My job is to prove I can write them with Darci and, like, make sure that everything is awesome. And then who knows what will happen in the future.
That sounds like a good idea. But a YA classical schedule lending thing sounds amazing. just putting that out there. Though you wouldn't have very many parameters because I don't even think Brandon knows the details of the world building.
I would probably be on the side of trying to pull ideas out of his brain because I don't want to come up with my own.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So, yeah.
Cool. Well, Janci, this has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. It was a pleasure to chat. I thought it was lovely, and it was lovely reading these novellas, really novels, but they were lovely, and I will strongly recommend anyone who hasn't read them to pick up the collection in April. Because
hopefully they're not listening right now if they haven't read them, but
yeah, if you are, welcome to the show. But
welcome to all the spoilers.
Yeah, but some people, sometimes me, likes all the spoilers, so hey.
Yeah.
I get people who watch my spoiler reviews for Cytonic who have not read Cytonic, or my overviews for the novellas. People definitely watch those and they hadn't read the books.
Yep.
Sometimes it can be less stressful to read things when you already know what's going to happen. I totally get that. When I watched Angel, the Joss Whedon show, I got partway into it and I was like, I just need to know who lives and who dies. I went up and looked up everything, and then I enjoyed it much more.
Yeah, well, it's I had a similar thing with the new She-Ra cartoon where I didn't watch it. I saw a spoiler of a couple that gets together at the end. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I want to see that now.
Yeah.
And I watched
sometimes
all of it.
I did that.
Spoilers are strange.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of the thing with Cytonic hooking into Evershore. It's I want to know the answers to this, and I better get the answers to this.
And one thing that was funny about the end of Evershore was the betas had almost all of them had read Cytonic. And so like they knew this thing. And I don't know if it was because of like the length of time between the Cytonic beta and the Evershore beta, but like almost all of them were like, I'm so surprised it moved. And I was like, are you though? Okay.
To be fair, there's a lot in the Cytonic epilogue, and admittedly, I totally glossed over it. I was more concerned about Jorgen in charge and where's Cobb.
Yeah. People miss that moment, or they forget about it, and then they're like, oh, and like some people even knew and remembered that, and then they just forgot about it while they were reading. We're like, oh yeah, I knew that was a thing, which I thought was awesome. It's like a bonus surprise I didn't think I was getting.
Bonus, nice. Well, I think what we have to do now, and Janci's already said, you're worried if you'll do well, is
I'm certain.
Who's that Cytoverse character?
This character is from Roshar.
Menace. Tien.
Tom.
Braze.
Void in drag on a horse.
It's time for Who's That Cosmere character? Caw. So welcome to Who's That Cytoverse character, the game where you send 5 clues and a character to wtcc at 17shard.com. I read each clue aloud, and after each clue, people make a guess for who's that Cytoverse character, but maybe don't send more Cytoverse characters in because we're probably not going to be doing a Cytoverse episode for like a long time. We've done a lot. There's been a lot of content recently. So maybe don't right now, but yeah, if there's some, we'll maybe get to them for Defiant, maybe. And so these could be from the novellas, they could be from whatever. In Cytoverse. I will say this,
Defending Elysium?
Probably not Defending Elysium. Spoiled.
I only remember the name of one character in that book.
Right, exactly. So does probably most people, to be honest.
Yeah.
Clue 1, this character likes eating.
Ned.
It's not Ned.
Boomslug.
It's not Boomslug.
Snuggles.
It's not Snuggles. Oh, I didn't say who this was by. This is from Riley the Procrastinator. So, and not like most things, #1 Talon fan who probably would send in slugs.
Did you just give away that it's not a slug?
I mean, the probability of slug things are definitely lessened if it's not Town fan sending them. So
it's funny because like his last couple of clues have started with this character is not a slug.
Right, exactly. I can't remember how well Brandon did when we had him.
He didn't get any of them.
Yeah, I don't think he got any of them.
It made me feel better.
It's really funny because he got really close on one.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't think Stormfather was a sliver, which is hilarious. Sorry, what was making you feel better?
Oh, it makes me feel better that the ones I watched, everybody kind of took forever.
Oh, yeah.
That always happens, yeah.
We usually do, yeah.
It's like, look at the shelf.
Yeah, I just stare at the book.
Look at your Roshar map, Erie, Rira. Where are the countries? Who are from each country?
That doesn't work as all the Cytoverse, but yeah.
Usually you pick a Rosharan character because that's usually first.
Can I just tell you how ridiculous it is to try to name characters when Brandon's canon has like every name that could ever be used already used? Yeah. How many times he's like, no, there's one of those in Mistborn. No, there's one of those in, I'm like, oh!
And he still has repeats anyway.
Yeah. Brandon does that himself. Like, he does that himself. Definitely been times in beta reads where I'm like, don't name it this. Like,
and he does anyway. It's infuriating. Dor the singer. Why? Why does there need to be a singer named Dor? It's stupid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, speaking of Maxime, that's my guess. So because like my immediate reaction when I saw that like in the art, I'm like, Brandon, at this point you should know there's a character in the Wheel of Time show that's called Maxime. Why are you gonna do this? So of course my mental image for Maxime in Cytoverse is Taylor Napier.
The ones that I had to rename were, I think, Unity was originally Harmony, which is Mistborn. And then I don't actually know who this character is. Atty, I think, was the one.
That's Ruin. That's Ruin's actual name.
And I changed it to a D instead. It's the little Kitsen, like, Speaker of the House person. I just changed the spelling, and I was like, it's fine. But
That's like my writing and like, ooh, I can't choose any of these names at all, ever. Like, oh, fun. Yeah. That's great. All right, Veronica, who likes eating? Yeah.
Oh, I did say Maxim. I don't know. I just.
Oh, Maxim? No, it's not Maxim. Okay, clue 2. This character does not live on the surface of a planet.
Most of the characters don't live on the surface of a planet.
Well,
welcome to WTCC.
What does it mean to be on the surface of a planet? What does it mean to be from a place? Although it does say live on, so not where they're from.
Yeah, because they're all on the platform or trees and stuff. I'm gonna say Galaif, Alanik's brother.
No, it's not them.
Becca Nightshade.
It's not Becca Nightshade.
I'm gonna say Peg because I do not think fragments count as the surface of a planet.
You don't think yeah, no, I would agree. Fragments are not a surface of a planet. It's not Peg though.
Morimer.
It's not Morimer. All right, clue 3. This character has a white-purple color scheme.
Is it Alanik?
It's not Alanik.
Rennekin?
It's not Rennekin.
Was it Rennekin's daughter?
That's
It's not Rennekin's daughter.
Yeah.
It was Einen. I know because we did it on the last episode.
That's exactly why I was thinking.
And I literally just edited it all yesterday.
So, likes to eat, doesn't live on the surface of the planet.
I forget about likes to eat. Oh my god.
And is white and purple?
Yes. Correct.
White and purple color scheme.
Yes.
Kuna?
It's not Kuna. Clue 4. This character does not have good eyesight.
Is it Jason Wright?
It's not Jason Wright. He is blind. That's true.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's blind. He is a cytonic. Sorry, say that again?
Somebody already guessed Gran.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This one might have a 6th bonus clue. I will say.
Cobb?
It's not Cobb.
He is very purple in Evershore.
Like, that doesn't fit half the clues, but sure.
Is it the Varvax cleaning lady on Starsight that cleans?
Mrs. Chamwit?
You guys did that one.
No, it's not Mrs. Chamwit. I also don't know if Varvax have good eyesight or bad. I honestly don't know. Clue 5. I think this will be helpful. This character has thousands of tongues arranged in a circular pattern around its mouth.
Oh, it's the
Mammoth Starpod.
Yes,
Mammoth Starpod.
It is the Mammoth Starpod at the end.
Oh my gosh!
The bonus clue would have been, okay, this character doesn't have a name, but I thought it was really funny, so I had to do this slot.
It's really funny.
And it is.
I still didn't get it when you read the clue.
So who actually gets that one, Eric? Because both Ian and I guessed it at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not keeping tally of that guy's spreadsheet who keeps track of these things. I don't know. But it was kind of a group effort, I think. Kind of.
Except me.
All right. This next one is sent in by Maliu73, which is William backwards. So that's, I don't know. It's hard to pronounce. And clue 1, this character is in multiple Cytoverse books. And I would say that the novellas would be considered books in this situation, just to be clear. What is a book?
Yeah.
Jason Wright.
Not Jason Wright.
FM.
It's not FM.
Cobb.
It's not Cobb. Yeah, like
Yeah,
with
sure,
clue 1,
right.
you have no idea who to choose.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's not Joshua White. Clue 2, this character flies ships. Very helpful, I know.
Yeah, it's
T-stall.
It's not T-stall.
Yeah.
Do we even have enough
just
for 5
like
T-stall clues?
Yeah, throwing darts at a dartboard.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it's so funny, like when we do get it on the
Yes,
first clue,
that's
where it's
true.
just like,
Oh my god, the Wheel of Time stream.
Yeah, we nailed it.
Ow.
Okay.
Sadie.
It's not Sadie.
Zine Nightshade.
Oh, it's not Z Nightshade.
I would argue he hasn't been in any. I guess he was in Skyward.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, he wasn't in multiple Cytoverse. Yeah, he died.
I forgot about that clue, to be honest.
Alanic.
It's not Alanic. Clue 3. This character has lost someone close to them. I know, again, very helpful.
Jorgen.
It's not Jorgen.
FM.
It's not FM.
I guessed FM before.
Oh, yeah. I guess you can have another guess. That's fine.
I want to guess Ironsides, but I don't think she's been in any
novella,
anything except the first one.
No.
Should write a novella about her.
Enjoying her retirement, eating algae strips. You called algae strips. Easy. Nice.
Was Spence's mom in multiple books? I don't feel like she was. She's just in Skyward.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yes. Spencer doesn't think about her mom very much.
Kimmelin?
It's not Kimmelin.
Mbot.
Ooh, it's not Mbot though.
Cowrie.
Ooh, it is Cowrie.
That was gonna be my next guess.
Yeah. The last two clues were this character is female, and clue 5 was this character is a Kitsen. So
just because we know Hesho is still alive, does it mean like she still thinks she lost somebody?
Yeah.
She's still grieved.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, and this last one is sent from Mia on Discord, and again, we're going to start with an extremely helpful clue. This character flew with Spencer. Which I know is very helpful. I know.
That really narrows down the playing field.
Yeah, to like most of the cast.
Vapor.
It's not Vapor.
Oh, that's what I was going to guess.
Oh.
Rig, because he did get to fly for a while.
Oh, that's true. It's not Rig. That's saying flew past tense very literally. Don't take the tense too literally.
Kimmelin.
It's not Kimmelin.
Hesho.
It is Hesho! Yay! You got it! Hey! Granted, I know it's clue 1 and it's completely coincidental, but hey, you did it! You got them! You officially did better than Brandon. Well, I mean, that was in Cosmere, admittedly, so it is a bit easier in Cytoverse rather than Cosmere. But the little other clues were this character fought in detritus. This character is not Cytonic. Clue 4 is this character was thought to be dead. And clue 5... which, I don't know about this last clue, but this character is a bad pilot, which we should probably put was past tense. Because he was very good in Cytonic. That was the whole point, right? Nice! Well, you got it, Janci. Good job.
I know my character's names.
Yeah.
Not that I've never written him.
You could write a Hesho novella.
Maybe.
What's he up to?
We'll see what happens to him in Defiant.
I mean, that's true. I am kind of expecting multiple characters to actually die because, it's the end of the series. It's time for the plot armor to come off, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm expecting.
But Eric, there's more books to go, so clearly we got to keep the plot armor on.
Just kill the ones who've already had the character arc.
It's
Come here,
the end of
Jorgen.
Spence's story. Like, we don't know why it's the end of her story.
That's true. That's
we could just fulfill and finish all of those resurrections that Brandon's done in Cytoverse so far and actually kill the characters off this time.
Yeah, so I expect there to be some deaths. Anyway, Janci, it's been a pleasure. And
it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again eventually.
That'd be awesome.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to say thank you to all of you guys and everyone on Discord and just the fandom at large. Like I said earlier, had imagined every bad fan reaction, and it's not so much like bad fan reactions to my work don't bother me, but I was worried about bad fan reactions to me, right? Like as a person, because the internet can get real mean, especially to women.
Yes.
And I have not had one single person be unkind to me, which is just incredible.
That is
you all are wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think some of the more critical things were more just like, I don't know if the writing style meshed as well with Brandon's. Like, yeah, sure. That's a perfectly reasonable opinion to have, or like not liking romance. Like, sure, that's fine.
Yeah. And I've seen people say critical things about the books, and that's totally cool. Like, criticize the books. It's all good. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But yeah, people have just been so nice, and I'm so grateful. And also grateful to everybody for reading. Thank you for giving these books a chance.
Yeah. I think they were legitimately great, and makes me extremely optimistic and excited for other collaborations, especially Alcatraz 6.
Excited.
I'm excited to finally read that eventually.
We should talk about that one when it's out.
Yes, we should.
That's
a good idea. I'll have to fit that into our Shardcast schedule, which is very beefy for 2022. I planned out the whole year, and it's gonna be a disaster, but that's fine. So you can find us for all your news, discussion, theories, and fun on 17hr.com. You can join our Discord. Chancey's in the Discord. She does the writing sprints on Discord sometime, and it's pretty fun if you're a writer. Like come into our writing channel, come into our Evershore channel and Cytonic stuff. And you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, YouTube. Leave a comment below what you thought of the Novellas as a whole. I guess you did that in the Evershore episode. Whatever, that's fine. And if you like our stuff, you can support us on Patreon. And we will see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Caw.